Thank you, Sarah, and hello, everyone. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Summer, and I work with Literacy Link South Central in London. Over the past few years, we've developed a rather passionate feeling for the maker movement um, and the opportunities that it really presents for hands-on learning in a really safe and fun environment. So, before we dive into today's topic, I wanted to give you a little overview of what we're going to be discussing. First, we're going to do a short getting to know you activity, and then we're going to talk about what gamification actually is, how it's been used outside of the educational field, and the core drives that make people want to play. We're going to be looking at the psychology of gamers, the non-gaming elements that are key to successful gamification, and how the traits that most gamers show can be helpful in the classroom. We're also going to look at when gamification goes wrong, so we can avoid some of common pitfalls, and look at some examples of it being used successfully in the realm of adult literacy. We will end today's webinar getting you ready to try gamification yourself, looking at tips and tricks to keep in mind, and resources to support you as you go. We'll also be doing a Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to use the chat box to send me your questions when we're wrapping up. So to get us started, I have a question. I want to get a sense of our playground. Are you a gamer? Now remember that gaming refers to many things, from games like World of Warcraft to Candy Crush, and it's not just relegated to games with screens. We don't want to forget tabletop games like Yahtzee and card games like Euchre. I see no one. Oh, one person just showed up with do not play games. Both screen-based and tabletop. All right, I'll give you about 10 more seconds. All right, so we got one more answer there. So as you can see, most of the folks joining us today are game players of some sort, and that is pretty reflective of North American society as a whole. About 58% of Canadians are electronic gamers through game consoles, computers, or social media. That comes from the Software Entertainment Association of Canada, by the way. And there are now 472 active game production studios in Canada. 143 of those companies launched in just the last 2 years. So it's definitely a booming industry here. Statistics are a little bit harder to find for tabletop and card gamers, but I think that the resurgence of small hobby, toy, and game stores and the emerging trend in board game cafes is a good indication that non-electronic games are alive and well. There's even a worldwide event to celebrate and practice good old-fashioned board games. It's called International Tabletop Day, and it's coming up in April every year. It's celebrated in 80 countries around the world with over 3,000 registered events. So again, it's definitely a good resurgence of the old-fashioned tabletop game as well. So next, I'd like to know whether you've heard of or have experience with gamification. It's obviously the topic of today's webinar, so you must have some interest in it, but let's get a feeling for our baseline. What is your understanding of or comfort with gamification? Give you about another 10 seconds. Okay, perfect. So from your responses, it appears that our common understanding of gamification is mixed. So I'm going to start out by talking a bit about gamification so we can definitely all be on the same page. At its core, gamification is the act of applying game design elements and motivations to a non-game setting in order to increase engagement, change behavior, or achieve a specific desired result. One quote I really like about gamification came from Assistant Professor Brian Arnold at National University in California, who said that with gamification, learning is not made into a game. The features of games, which entice players to engage, are used to draw in learners. These game design elements, or enticing features, may include an opportunity to explore, built-in competition, clear goals, an ability to measure progress towards your goals, and a place to try and fail without lasting consequences. So once you know what it is, suddenly gamification is everywhere. It's a little like when you buy a car and suddenly you see the same make of car everywhere you go. Gamification has most commonly been used in marketing. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if anyone else is holding a coffee right now, but did you know that Tim Hortons Roll with the Rim to Win is back, by the way? Now you can find gamification being used to encourage people to be more physically active, to use their online resources more effectively, to complete training sessions like this one, and more. So for some examples, Dropbox, which is the online cloud storage software, does a great job of using gamification to encourage its users to install software on additional devices, upload more files, invite friends to use Dropbox, and they reward them with additional storage space each time they do. If you're a Fitbit wearer, you're probably already familiar with earning badges, challenging your friends and family to match your number of steps, viewing your leaderboard, tracking your stats, and more. Even those old choose-your-own-adventure books that a lot of us read as children use gamification to encourage kids to keep reading and then rereading their books. Now, as an adult, my Kobo e-reader rewards me by giving me badges and titles based on my reading habits, too. Gamification really is everywhere. In an excellent example of how gamification can be used in almost any situation if the audience buys into it, Jane McGonigal, herself a game designer and advocate for positive results within gaming, gamified her own recovery from a traumatic concussion. She created a recovery game called Super Better that helped her start feeling heroic and determined instead of hopeless. With a set of rules that included completing quests, seeking power-ups, recruiting allies, she broke down what, at the time, was an overwhelming task into smaller, more achievable goals to help her with her recovery. What makes Jane's gamified recovery even more interesting to me is that a randomized controlled study conducted at the University of Pennsylvania found that following the rules she created for 30 days significantly reduced symptoms of depression and anxiety, and increased optimism, social support, and participants' belief in their own ability to achieve their goals. I'd like you to think a bit about your own motivation to game. Why do you enjoy playing the games that you play? And what keeps you coming back to play again? And this might take a couple of minutes because I know the answers are a little bit longer. Okay, about another 10 seconds. All right. So we have a nice balance today for sure. When we're playing games, we often find ourselves feeling the things that you've identified in this poll. The sense of camaraderie with those we're playing with or against, a rush of excitement when we accomplish a task, and a general sense of engagement or fun. I'm going to get back to your specific results in a minute, but for now, let's take a look at why we're feeling those things and what makes us come back for more. Gamification researchers like UK Chow have examined the elements of games that give us those feelings. And Chow's work breaks it down into 8 core drives of gaming. Each of the drives is listed on your screen, but I'll put them into gamer language as we go. So the first is epic meaning and calling. In other words, what makes me want to participate in this game? Why is it going to become important to me? Next is development and accomplishment. How do I know I'm progressing while I play? Do I get to level up, earn badges, points, rewards? Then we have empowerment and creativity. Can I do things over again in a new way to see if it improves my game? Next is ownership and possession. This game, this journey is mine, and I care if it's successful. I won't let that invading army take my castle. Then we have social influence and relatedness. There's a feeling of community with those I'm playing with, and a great opportunity for me to measure my skills against theirs too. We also have scarcity and impatience. If something in the game is limited, either in a number available or a time period when you can get it, I'll work harder and longer for it as a result. Then there's unpredictability and curiosity. That's the whoa, I didn't expect that moment. And now I want to stick around to see what will happen next. Finally, there's loss and avoidance. If I don't keep playing or check in on my game every day, I'm going to miss out on something. Understanding the core drives of gaming gives us some great tools to motivate people to play. But gamification is not a one-size-fits-all solution. To design a meaningful gamified experience, you need to understand your individual audience and what drives them specifically. One method of learning about your audience from a gamification perspective is through testing their gamer psychology. There are several online multiple choice assessments that analyze the user's instincts and choices against gamer types with different learning styles. Many gamification experts and practitioners use the Bartle test of gamer psychology, but it is just one of several that are available online. Knowing which gamer type your audience most closely associates with can help you design gamified activities that resonate with the learners you're trying to reach. We'll use the Bartle test as our primary example. It weighs the learner's answers into the categories of explorer, achiever, socializer, and killer. Learners who score high in the explorer category are gamers that like the freedom to wander and discover things about elements of the game through experimentation. They like to figure out how things work and are probably the person you want on your Friday night trivia team. Those who score high in the achievers category will be pretty happy to hear that. They are the point-oriented gamers who enjoy being at the top of the leaderboard or who want to be rewarded for being the first to finish something. Goal-oriented, these learners may not see the value in a game unless there is a clearly defined winner, and it can be them. Learners with high socializer scores are motivated by meaningful interactions and relationships, and often view gaming as a way to make or connect with friends. They are the networkers in our midst and seek out other like-minded gamers to work together to achieve more than they could alone. And they probably want to stay the heck away from those who score high in the killer category. While achievers take pleasure in the act of winning, killers tend to enjoy the act of defeating an opponent more than the winning itself. Because winning is often secondary to the game, killers are not as discouraged by failure and tend to be risk takers as a result. Other quizzes use the same input pattern, but change the names of the categories. So you might end up with innovators, strategists, effectors, and aces at the end. But the philosophy is much the same. So based on my super scientific pregame assessment, I now know that participants in today's webinar are mostly socializers. So I'll be doing my best to give you time to connect with one another over the QA at the end. What we can tell through looking at gaming psychology and the 8 core drives of gaming are that one size does not always fit all. Not every game element will work for every learner, nor can or should they all be incorporated into every learning activity. Really, while points and rewards are nice, people are motivated by the sense of fulfillment and achievement gained when challenges are overcome, and because they find the meaning in the game.
Just stand by, folks.
With that in mind, there are 3 key ingredients that must accompany any gamified activity for it to be successful.
Summer, go ahead. You are just experiencing a little bit of rebounding in your mic, but go ahead, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the three key ingredients that I wanted to talk about. The first one is meaning. In other words, making sure that the experience or activity connects with learners by speaking to their interests, passions, goals, curiosities. As we all know from working with adult learners, those things change from person to person. And that's part of why knowing your audience is such a huge piece of successful gamification. Gamified activities don't work unless learners see or connect with the meaning behind the activity itself. The second one is mastery. For a learner to master something, they recognize that their skills are growing in a meaningful and hard-earned way. Simply rewarding learners with points based on their progress isn't enough. They need to feel as though they've actually earned them. Activities must be challenging yet obtainable. Gamified activities are an excellent playground for trial and error in an environment that feels safe. Mastery after repeated attempts can be extremely rewarding. And finally, autonomy. Ultimately, this happens when a learner is compelled to continue an activity because they want to, not because they've been told to. This sense of autonomy can flow from the first two ingredients. If the activity connects with the learner in a meaningful way, and they enjoy the sense of mastery they receive, they will be compelled to continue learning. And just imagine if they could be having fun at the same time. So education and our jobs, serious business. So why would we even want to encourage a gaming mindset in the classroom? Just look at the commitment being shown by the average gamer who is just one level away from an epic win in the game of their choice. The passion, the dedication, the drive. Who wouldn't want that from their learners? Gaming traits include problem solving, collaboration skills, focus, and a continual skill development. Perhaps most importantly, gamers fail all the time. Okay, so maybe a piece gets thrown across the room or a controller gets slammed down on a table out of frustration. But you know what happens next? The gamer thinks, all right, well, I know that didn't work. And they pick the controller back up and try again, learning from what went wrong last time so that they can achieve a different and hopefully better outcome this time. Think back to what I said earlier about mastery. People don't get excited about mastering an element of a game that's really easy. Overcoming the challenge is what gives the gamer a sense of pride and accomplishment in their skills. Harnessed in an educational setting, these are hugely powerful traits for success. In the unique environment of adult literacy, I would argue that there are even greater benefits. Consider using gaming elements as a motivational tool to allow adult literacy learners to gain confidence just by doing something a little bit better than they did it last time, even if they aren't successful. Replace the measuring stick, and learners can recognize and celebrate success by learning from their mistakes and making small improvements, rather than by comparing their skills to other people in their lives, which could be disheartening, or even others in their learning environment who may be at different literacy levels than they are. As the use of gamification grows in fields like marketing, healthcare, and education, we have to look at the ways it doesn't work as well as the way it does. With its growing popularity as a tool, a lot of people are adding concepts of gamification to their projects or programs. That doesn't mean it's being done well, though. As I said earlier, adding game elements to something that your target audience doesn't connect with is not going to suddenly make it work. Successful gamification strategies must go beyond just adding points, levels, or rewards. Otherwise, a blank screen that invites the user to repetitively click a single button to earn points would be the most exciting and popular game in the world. Some of the most common mistakes people make when trying to incorporate gamification into a learning environment include misinterpreting what motivates their audience. As an example, just because competition drives some gamers doesn't mean it drives everyone. In fact, adding a ranking chart to compare the scores of a room full of people who feel self-conscious about their skills and abilities can motivate them in a very different way, right out the door. Adding badges, levels, or point values to everything. Don't get me wrong, these tools can be very motivating, but rewarding users for easily obtained tasks will make the points seem arbitrary or even condescending. I've never met a learner that will invest time and energy in their work if they feel they're being pandered to. Have you? And adding out-of-context gaming elements. At the beginning of this webinar, I mentioned that gamification is about the process of engaging people in learning using the same things that engage them in games, not necessarily turning the learning itself into a game. While there are lots of great examples of learning games, simply making a learning activity into a game is not actually gamification, and out of context, it can be downright confusing. So if we're talking about what goes wrong when gamification is done poorly, there must be a flip side to the coin, right? We have a host of examples of gamification in the marketing, healthcare field, children's education. Since the majority of us work with adult literacy learners, I'll focus on some interesting examples of gamification in action within the literacy environment. Kevin Brown from McMaster University developed 2 tablet applications for the Brant Skills Center, designed to help adult learners improve their basic literacy skills. The apps, each of which used a different game element, focused on 2 problem areas identified by both the staff and learners at the Brant Skills Center: homophones and punctuation. The homophone app focused on tricky words. On the title screen, users are given the option to select one of 6 homophones they would like to learn about. As users correctly complete exercises related to the word they chose, they are awarded a green check mark. Once all 5 available exercises for the word are complete, the user receives a gold check mark next to the word, showing their ultimate mastery of the homophone. The punctuation app was designed to teach how and when to use periods, quotation marks, and question marks in a sentence. Users are presented with a number of sentences and different punctuation options, and are given a limited time to drag and drop the appropriate punctuation into each sentence until the correct placement is found. By limiting the amount of time users have to complete each sentence, the app made the task of punctuating sentences more challenging and therefore more engaging. Both apps were play tested by learners, and while the feedback for each was positive, it was interesting to note the difference in how learners interacted with one another when they were using the apps. When using the homophone app, learners compared scores and competed to see who could get a gold check mark first. When using the punctuation app, the overall vibe in the classroom intensified, and instead of interacting with one another, learners blocked out external stimuli to instead focus on beating the clock as they punctuated their sentences. The Thames Valley District School Board's Gateway to Learning program developed a cutting-edge training opportunity for their students to learn traditional literacy concepts in a very non-traditional way. The course is called Arducopter and includes elements of math, technology, geography, and hands-on learning, all used as participants build a remote control quadcopter from scratch and send it on actual test flights. The course takes learners who are highly motivated by the concept of both hands-on building and the cool factor of the drone quadcopter through exercises about their own learning style, workshop safety, technical terminology, and diverse mathematical concepts. Lessons bounce back and forth from research-based to hands-on building to exercise-based, keeping learners active and engaged in each component of the course in small chunks. And best of all, they see their progress being built, bit by bit, as they assemble their class quadcopter together. What I think is particularly cool about this course is the embedded mathematical concepts. If you were to say to most adult learners, "Hey, do you want to spend a couple of hours learning about calculating area and perimeter?" I suspect you'll get a pretty lukewarm response. Ask some of those same learners, hey, do you want to spend a couple of hours learning how to fly a drone quadcopter? We'll need to know how to complete area and perimeter calculations to program the flight software. Are you in? I think you'll find you get a pretty different response. Literacy Link South Central, in partnership with local organization called the MakerBus, developed a set of 12 modules to help expose adult literacy learners to new and innovative technology. Focused on technology that's both practical and inspiring, these Maker modules are structured to allow learners to experience and play in the safety of the MakerBus's mobile classroom. Learners make the decision about which modules appeal to them the most by voting for their top 3 choices. Then, before the actual activities begin, they work through pre-visit activities to lay the groundwork for some of the technology that will be introduced. There's also a post-visit activity for each module that allows learners to discuss the implications of the technology they've experienced. While there's not a level or a badge in sight, these interactive modules provide an opportunity for hands-on learning and experimentation with technology that most literacy learners wouldn't normally have access to, including 3D scanners and 3D printers, podcasting hardware and software, macro photography, and more. Learners can even learn how to play the piano using bananas and tinfoil during one of the modules, all while learning what materials are conductive and non-conductive. I also want to take a moment to look at one of the ways gamification has been used in adult literacy across the pond. All the way back in 2003, a computer game called Runner was commissioned by the University for Industry, now known as LearnDirect in the UK. With a focus on teaching language and communication skills, Runner was set in a futuristic London featuring a Blade Runner-like atmosphere. Players worked their way through a shady underworld delivering packages, and when a simple drop-off went wrong, they were plunged into an adventure that included kidnapping, foiling an assassination plot, and saving the city. The game's learning content was mapped to the England and Wales 2001 Adult Literacy Core Curriculum, and included real-world challenges within the gameplay context. That concept is consistent with the OALCF's emphasis on performing tasks that are authentic and applicable in the real world. Players actively engaged with characters in the game, sometimes having to interpret scrambled or cut-off messages. Through the game, they received feedback on how well they understood and followed their mission instructions. Players were scored according to 3 categories: listening, reading, and grammar, and could view their progress at any time as they worked their way through their mission. As a bonus, the score section of the game interface also provided players with the opportunity to get curriculum, but not gameplay, help. One final example I want to share with you is a sneak peek at a course that's still under development. The first stage has already been piloted and additional materials being developed so that the course can be taken to the next level. Targeting male youth aged 19 to 29 who were not in education, employment, or training, Literacy Link's Innovate project is a place-based learning initiative bringing literacy program to basketball courts using a trio of really cool tools. At the heart of the program is the 9450 Smart Sensor basketball. It's a basketball that looks and feels just like any other, but has sensors embedded within that measure any force applied to it: spin, acceleration, dribble speed, and more. Used with the 9450 app and the SmartNet, players and facilitators get a full 360-degree view of what's happening with the ball and with the player that's moving it. The modules that are designed to accompany this trio of tools take learners not only through basketball drills to improve their skills, but give them an opportunity to learn and apply mathematical concepts as they calculate angles and speeds and track their individual and squad stats. As their skills and knowledge increase, learners progress through levels including rookie, starter, all-star, MVP, and more. This project, created in partnership with the MakerBus and Abundant Life Community Church, and funded through the Westminster College Foundation, uses some pretty fascinating technology. But it also demonstrates a really neat take on one of the keys of successful gamification. Rather than taking existing curriculum and adding gaming elements that they hoped would appeal to the intended audience, the team looked at what was already a driving force in these young men's lives and created curriculum around it. They were avid basketball players who, while not committed to working or attending school, were committed to practicing their basketball skills. So why not meet them where they're at? Gamification in education must enrich the learning process through storytelling, inventive challenges, and fun. We don't need reused marketing gimmicks, but imaginative curriculum designers with an understanding of teaching, ready to find innovative ways of making educational subjects just as exciting and engaging as their learners' favorite games are. I think that might be you. If it is, you're probably pretty excited right now and ready to go do some playing of your own. You understand that adult literacy learners have varying concerns and different reasons for engaging in learning than younger students, and you're ready to help renew their motivation and engagement through gamification. You are ready for this challenge, and here are some tips to make your experience a successful one. Start with a pregame assessment to find out more about your learners and what motivates them. Some adult learners may be skeptical about the idea of games in any form of education, thinking of them as inherently childish. Remember that at its heart, gamification is about applying the game design elements and motivations that work for your learner into your curriculum. It is not an all or nothing proposition, so use the elements that work for your audience. But don't forget to play a little yourself. Try adding an element of gamification that you're not sure about. It might just surprise you. Connect the learner with the ultimate meaning behind the activity. Remember that adult learners are usually engaged in education for very specific reasons, so consider how your gamified activity reflects the learner's goal path and clearly outline that connection with your participant. Get their input and feedback and let them be part of the planning process for these activities. That sense of teamwork and ownership, combined with a good understanding of how the skills they're developing will get them closer to their personal goals, will provide a sense of deeper meaning for the activity. Build feedback mechanisms into your activities so that the learner can know how they're doing. They can track progress. They can see their skills developing. Many learners gain confidence and become more willing to try when they see that they're making progress and have mastered at least some of the skills they're trying to develop. And finally, give learners to try and fail without consequence. In most of the games we play, a huge piece of our skill development comes from making mistakes and learning from them so we can do better next time. Give your learners the same opportunity. With these tips and some of the other resources I'm going to mention to you in your back pocket, you're ready to play. Much of the information that I've shared with you today is available in our report, Gamification and Adult Literacy, Investigating the History, Impact, and Execution of Gamification Principles in Adult Education. To see what we've discussed in action in a downloadable activity ready for use in your classroom, please help yourself to the document called Using Gamification Techniques to Increase Learner Comfort with Typing. And for some quick and easy reminders to keep in mind while you work, don't forget to look over the summary document called Gamification Tips for Educators. All of these documents and many more resources are available on the Literacy Link South Central website using the link shown on your screen. There are truly hundreds of resources available online to help you learn more about gamification. The bibliography of the report I mentioned on the last slide has many great reference documents, and here are two more for you. Both are online warehouses just full of information about gamification. The first is a wiki hosted by Badgeville, and it's a great resource for educators interested in adding gamification techniques to their classroom exercises. The second is the online bibliography posted by the Gamification Research Network. but beware. There is so much interesting information available that you should probably use the washroom and grab a fresh cup of coffee before you dive into that one. And with that, we're going to be bringing the presentation portion of today's webinar to a close. I am going to be sticking around for a Q&A, but before we get started, I wanted to remind you that a link to the evaluation for today's webinar will be sent to you both via the text chat box and also via an email immediately following the webinar. Please do fill it out. We really do appreciate your feedback. You will also receive a copy of today's webinar slide deck by email, and if you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out either by phone or email at the contact information you see on your screen. So now I'm going to pass the floor to you. If you have any other questions, gamification resources that you know of you'd like to share, please use the text box and I'll do my best to respond to them.
Thanks, Summer. I'm also watching for any raised hands. If you want to click on the raised hand icon to flag our attention, I can also give you a mic if you have come equipped with a microphone to this morning session. And I hope there are some questions and comments for Summer. She has a wealth of information and resource experience.
While folks are thinking about any questions they may have, one of the other things that I wanted to mention regarding the Maker modules that I mentioned to you earlier, I said that they were available for download and that when we produced them, we traveled around with the Maker Bus's mobile classroom so that people could leave the indoor literacy program they were attending, walk out to the parking lot, and literally climb on a bus. But please know that you don't actually need a bus to be able to execute some of these modules. They are available for download for free, and many of the actual technology that's used are apps that are also downloadable on most smartphones for free. The pieces of technology that are more expensive, we tried to keep within as reasonable a cost as we could. So for example, with the podcasting module, you can actually purchase the software and microphone that you need for around $50. The other thing that I would suggest is for something that's a little more high-end technologically, like the 3D printer, hooking up with a local maker movement organization in your area may allow you to partner and come up with a borrowing situation for that technology.
Excellent suggestions, Summer, and I wonder if you could comment perhaps on what you've found might be stumbling blocks for practitioners who haven't tried any of this before. Is there a way to approach it to help people maybe overcome their fear of this kind of new direction?
Absolutely. A couple things that I would mention is that this can be a really cool adventure for you and your learners together as well. So, I think a lot of the times when we are standing with a group of learners and we're meant to be their facilitator, their leader, you feel like you have to have all the answers. You have to know what is going on in any of the questions that they may have. And I think that coming to the realization that this gamification can be something that you and your learners do and experience and learn about together will not only make it more comfortable for you to play and try and figure things out with the gamification concepts we've talked about, but it also allows the learner to feel like they're part of the process. You're going to get a great amount of buy-in from the learner if they're learning along with you, right? It sort of evens the playing field. The other thing that I would suggest is just to take some time to do some reading and listen to more online resources like this as well. Download some of the Maker modules, look at some of the other resources that we've talked about, and feel free to reach out to your peers and to us and ask questions, because we started out knowing not a lot about the Maker movement, I would say maybe about 4 years ago roughly. And now everything that comes out, it's just, even if I've never heard of it before, it becomes an exciting possibility as opposed to something that I'm thinking, uh-oh, here comes another thing.
Great suggestion, Summer. Thank you. Now we have a question from Linda in the text. She's wondering if gamification might help learners wean themselves from texting in class somewhat. Not sure if that was a serious question or a comment.
I am not sure if it could wean them from it, but there are a few online apps that you can use where you can actually engage your learners in participating in class using their phones. So there are standalone things like clickers that you can purchase, but almost everyone has a smartphone now anyway. You can actually do a texting survey where you can broadcast live on your screen questions, kind of like what we did with our 3 polls earlier in the survey. And in order to participate and give their opinion, they have to text you their choices on their smartphone. So maybe less about stopping them from texting and more about making texting work for you.
Thanks, Summer. Now, Joe's had her hand up, and Joe, I've given you access to your microphone. So if you click the microphone icon to the left of your name, I hope we'll be able to hear your question. Would you like to go ahead? Unfortunately, I see that your microphone's active, but we're not hearing you, Joe. So perhaps I could ask if you could put your question or your comment into text chat for Summer, please. And while we're waiting for Joe's question or comment in the text chat, does anyone else have a question or a comment that Summer can respond to?
Well, as we're waiting, I will mention that just because this webinar comes to a close doesn't mean that the subject matter is coming to a close. So if you would like to get in contact and continue discussing things, or you do more reading and end up with more questions as a result of what you've read, we're available.
Thanks, Summer. Now, Joe has been able to put her question in the text chat, and Joe's wondering if it's possible to apply games during one-to-one tutorials or mentoring.
The playground is pretty much open. Whether or not it's something that you wanted to do as a large group or in a one-to-one setting, remembering that it's about what makes people want to play a game and taking that motivation and transferring it into education. We play one-on-one games. Deck of cards and 2 people is enough to entertain me for about 3 hours. So anything that can be done one-on-one from a gaming perspective could absolutely be put into a tutoring perspective as well. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, as well for the sort of structure that is in many of our classrooms where you do some exercises in a book and some on a computer and then back to the book and then back to the computer. That blended learning is also, I think, really an open playing field for additional gamification comments as well. The trick is, if you've never done it before, you've just got to try it the first time and see what works and see what doesn't.
Excellent advice. Thanks, Summer. And I guess I should ask if you have a favorite game beyond those long card games.
Me personally? Yeah, absolutely. I'm a gamer, as you can probably tell. I am not as big on video games, online games, as I am face-to-face games. I'm also a socializer, by the way. And I love Ticket to Ride, and I love King of Tokyo, and I love good old-fashioned euchre, and King's Cribbage and regular cribbage, and I could probably go on for a while. Nobody really needs to know the rest. I actually have I have a bookshelf full of games.
Well, wonderful. So Summer's proved that she practices what she preaches. And Summer, if I may, I'm just going to go back to your contact information here on the screen in case people think of questions to follow up with. I want to remind our participants here that you will have access to this recording after, and if you are interested in viewing it with your colleagues, you're welcome to download it. When you do play it back, just give us a few minutes to take care of publishing the recording this morning, and you will be seeing a message from me with Summer's presentation and again the link to the evaluation. So do watch for that. Are there any final comments or questions for Summer? I'm seeing some great appreciation here today, Summer, from our audience. We're really glad several of you were able to be together to take this in and perhaps give it further thought for working with your own learners. And I'd like to invite all of you to watch for information about our next online Community of Practice webinar, which will be Friday, the 4th of March, same time, same place, 10 in the morning. We hope you'll join us for that webinar, which will be focused on the principles of performance management and using your reports to help you better plan for and implement your programming in your organizations. So I'd like to thank Summer very much for putting so much excellent information out here for us, and to speak to your experience developing some games that really do go to where the learners are, to reach them and to make these activities meaningful and to provide them with new ways to learn. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome, and thanks for having me today. It was great fun.
Okay, folks, I will stay and watch to see if there are any other questions and comments. Otherwise, I wish you a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. You can exit this session by going to the upper right area of your screen and clicking on Exit. Thank you.